Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Before we begin to talk biodiversity, should you wish to find out what your IMEI is, this is how you get it. *#06#. *#06#. Right, Ayo?
Yes, I will do that later. But do I need the number?
You don't. What do you need the information for?
To get money from you or something?
No, you can't get money from me. Your network already has the information. So that if you lose your phone and you call them that you've lost your phone, they can identify which particular phone you're talking about.
Oh.
And be able to block it.
In case you have used diverse phones. Oh, diversity.
Biodiversity. Not diversity. Biodiversity. Good morning, Ayo.
Okay, yes. Good morning.
Welcome back. Thank you.
Thank you. It's International Day of Biodiversity, a day set aside to raise awareness about biodiversity issues and increasing understanding. I'm sure you're wondering, what is this? I'm not the one that answered the question. We have a couple of gentlemen with us in the studio now, and another will be joining us soon enough. Peter Knight is Executive Director, Wild Aid. He joins us this morning. Thank you, as well as Joseph Onoja, Technical Director, Nigeria Conservation Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. First of all, before you go to International Day of Biodiversity, what is biodiversity?
Thank you.
It sounds like a social studies question, but for God's sake, who knows?
Well, biodiversity is the short form of biological diversity.
What is this diversity in all of this?
Yes, so I'm coming to that. So biology is just life on Earth. And the diversity part of it is the fact that the life on Earth is very diverse. Sometimes we humans think that we are the only living organisms on Earth.
Well, because everything else is under us.
Yes, everything, surrounding us. Not doing that, I used to say that we are the least equipped to live on Earth. Because we are the most delicate. We think that we are the superior because of the intelligence we have. But some of this intelligence even is because we can control others. If not, we are the least equipped. So we are part of a major biological entities that we have here on Earth. So because they are diverse, and that's what we call biological diversity.
Who are these other co-tenants?
You talk about from the least microbes to the giant elephants and the whales that you see. So there we are, and we are all interconnected. So nature has created a balance so that we all exist in a balance. And that is why we need to create that consciousness that we are not alone. We are not just, it's not the biological unison, it's biological diversity. We are very diverse, yes, in different forms.
And this is all about us coexisting
in a balance,
beneficially together.
Exactly.
And giving everybody their
own time, their own space to live.
Okay.
And you know what? If that balance is distorted, humans are the ones who suffer most. So we need to state that very clearly.
Humans are also the ones who can affect that balance.
Exactly.
Oh dear.
Exactly.
Oh dear. So
I think of biodiversity almost like our immune system, right? So if we have a lot of diversity and we get hit by something, then we have a lot of different antibodies that can fight against it. And the less biodiversity you have, the more vulnerable you are to something like a disease outbreak, to a drought or something like that. So it's really important, not just for the health of the animals and the wildlife, but our own health. I mean, we have to think of it as one system. There's a thing now called One Health.
I don't think the understanding of what biodiversity is, is even well known.
No.
Because, I mean, you just talked about microbes and all those things. I did a crazy search one day online of how many cells are in the human body. Guess what I found? 37.2 trillion cells in my body. 37.2 trillion cells.
It's mind-blowing. And then you think about the diversity of life on the planet. And something that always amazes me is we are not aware yet of life outside this planet. And yet we have an abundance of it.
Are we coming across
the one on Earth?
On Earth.
No, we're not. And but this is perhaps the most precious resource in the entire universe. And we're squandering it, and we're destroying it, and we're damaging it by our careless actions.
So now
we're damaging ourselves at the same time.
Thank you. So to that question now, how do we damage? What kind of consciousness do people need to have about biodiversity? Thank you very much. Biodiversity, on its own. What kind of consciousness do we all need to have? And is it peculiar to a certain set of people and not to others?
Everybody affects biodiversity in different ways, whether it's directly by perhaps eating an animal, in the bushmeat trade, which is unsustainable, or whether, when we add to the climate, our impact on climate, when we go in a vehicle, that has an impact on biodiversity too. And human beings have not been very good about, protecting biodiversity. We're getting a little bit better in some areas, but our impact on the planet is getting more and more. So really, in everybody's day-to-day life, are there ways that you don't have to consume resources to help? Is there little ways you can save and help? That's what we can all do to help biodiversity.
Nice, you just touched a raw nerve there when you mentioned bushmeat.
Please, we're going to have to decrypt that in a short while. But we have the founder of Lufasi Park, and who is also an environmentalist ambassador, Desmond Majakodumi, also joins us virtually this morning. Well, thank you for joining us. Well, most certainly what we are talking about here would look like, will sound like some PhD level talk, biodiversity. Well, these gentlemen have tried to explain it. One of them even touched on our bushmeat. But could you decrypt further for better understanding what people need to know as basic as possible about biodiversity and how we should respect it on a daily?
Yes, that's we really need to look at that. And, being very religious and God-fearing people here in Nigeria, we can actually refer to our scriptures and the way the whole life came to us. And there's so much diversity within the creation process. Now, whether this creation process was over a very, very, very long span of time, as science seems to indicate, or maybe a little bit shorter, that's not even the point. The reality is that within the creation, there are so many different aspects because it's a building of a life support system. And in any building, just your studio, you have different aspects. You have your foundation, you have your beams. Inside the beams, you have steel, you have concrete, you have gravel, you have wood, you have so many different aspects just for a small building, let alone for the very life support systems that humanity depend on entirely. You have different aspects. And that is what the biodiversity is all about. But the reason why you have people, those two guests in your studio, who are, highly intelligent people, these are people who understand many things, and they are dedicating their lives to the preservation and the protection of biodiversity because they understand how much damage we human beings have done to this biodiversity. Remember, we said it's our life support system. And we are damaging it almost beyond a state of possible repair. So our attitudes must change. We must have far, far more reverence to these wonderful, what I call the miracles of creation. Today, we're celebrating World Biodiversity Day. Tomorrow, we're going to be celebrating World Turtle Day. If you know what just that turtle can do, a turtle that will be hatched on Lekki Beach, right here in Lagos, okay? And it goes into the sea, it swims around for 3-4 years, goes across to America. Guess what? It comes back to the same Lekki Beach and hatches more eggs again. And in the process between it going and coming back, it's done so many good things within the environment, wonderful things that help to maintain a balance in the seas. We must protect, we must really have full reverence for the wonderful miracles of creation which are expressed as biodiversity. So I hope Alara understands that bushmeat, you don't do.
I don't do
Just
bushmeat.
take it easy.
Yeah, talking about bushmeat, Dr. Noja. I mean, how are you going to take this message to Nigerians? Some of them eat nothing but bushmeat because they say it is healthy. They don't trust the beef that you get in the market. They don't trust the pork and all that. So this, for me, is a hard sell. And it's your job to tell Nigerians to stop eating bushmeat because of the work that those animals do in the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is where it comes in. You know, these things have been in existence even before this present generation. If the people who were before us consumed the way we are consuming, you know, everything we talk about is sustainably. We're not talking about sustainably. And there are some, because we have driven down their population, they have now been enlisted what we call the IUCN Red List to be endangered. So what that means is that we have been consuming them unsustainably. If we were consuming them sustainably, then they will continue. Now, sustainably simply means I will eat today, I will eat tomorrow. But let's ask ourselves, the rate at which we are eating today, are we going to be able to eat tomorrow? Now, when you talk about the bushmeat that we are talking about, this bushmeat, for instance, people like eating pangolins. And when you remove pangolins from the environment, it's been shown that one pangolin saves a forest as large as 30 football fields in a year because they consume over 70 million ants and termites. So if you remove a single pangolin, imagine the destruction that will happen to the forest. And what happens is that when these ants and termites, when they are prevalent, what happens? We will not be able to live where we are living. Yeah, because they will sack us from our environment. So that's just an example. And then they play different parts in the ecosystem. No, the thing that we should be talking about is sustainably. But you go in there, in those days where hunters normally have their rules. Number one, you don't kill a pregnant female. You don't kill a juvenile, because those are the ones that will sustain the population. But now everybody goes in there and wipes out a whole family. And you expect to find there tomorrow? And that is one aspect. Now talk about the zoonosis you are talking about. What? The health component, the zoonotic diseases, where the transfer of diseases from the animal population into the human population. So these are all the things that we continue to bring to people's awareness.
I think many people don't understand that most of the deadly diseases that human beings have originally came from animals. And many of them we caught when we domesticated animals. So when we had chickens and pigs and we brought them into our families and our houses around, we got a lot of these diseases. So the most likely source of a new disease now is from wild animals. And not when they're in the wild. If they're in the bush, it's fine. But if you take them, you transport them, you trap them, you stress them, that's when these diseases can jump. And they can jump from one species to another. So with coronavirus right now, the current theory is it was originated in horseshoe bats, and somehow it got to human beings. And the pangolin is one of those species which might have been the vector in between. So there are approximately 600 to 800,000 viruses out there in the wild. And in the wild, they don't bother us, they're safe, there's no problem. But when we go to remote areas, particularly areas that have been deforested, that people weren't in before, we take these animals out, and guess what? 12 hours later, they're being sold in a Lagos market, right in a city of 22 million people. And this is the deadly danger of zoonotic disease. So this is another reason to avoid bushmeat.
Okay, I'm not going there yet. But let me ask you this. Interestingly, your first name is Peter.
Peter, yep.
Makes you Christian. And the three of you, you have Desmond, you have Joseph, and Peter. So I'm going to go to your Bible.
Okay.
It says somewhere there, it sounds like we're not even supposed to be eating meat.
I'm not sure it goes that far, but tell me a thing. It would be good for the planet to eat less meat, that's for sure. Less meat would be good for the planet.
Because it says, I've given you seed-bearing plants and trees for your food.
Yeah.
That's all I have here.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't say meat.
I haven't seen the meat part of it. Is that in any way suggesting that, maybe we should moderate our nutrition as a people? In what way will that help the message of biodiversity?
Well, one of the big impacts that meat production has is it has a very high carbon footprint, particularly beef. You know, and so as you go down, beef uses a tremendous amount of water resources for a pound of beef. Tremendous amount of land needs to be used. A lot of vegetables that we could eat directly have to go through a cow, and it's not a very efficient way of getting that nutrition, right? You look at that. And also, cows are very good at exuding gas from both ends.
Okay.
And that's, I won't go any further into that, but that is also an issue.
I don't think you should even go any further. I don't think you should even go any further at all right now. But Mr. Naja, this message of biodiversity, something that you all in the industry, in the environment, have also put out to us, is that 80%, I saw a figure here now, as many as 80% of people living in rural areas in developing countries rely on traditional plant-based medicines for basic health care. Now, you cited an instance the other time of the sustainability of these things. On the one hand is the challenge of sustainability. On the other hand is the ever-growing population. Where's the balance?
Yeah, and that is where we are struggling. If left alone, the local communities, they knew how to do these things, and that was why you have things like evil forests, evil groups, and so on. That it's only the high priest that goes in. Yes, they call it evil forest to scare people to go in there, but it's only the high priest that goes in there to go and select some very nice herbs and come out and do it. Now, with population, we are losing some of the values.
We're losing some of the evil forests.
We become aware that maybe some of those things are not how it is, and then people are more. We are chasing money, and the bad thing about this is, let me give an example. If you have a watershed, a forest that serves as a watershed, it's controlling the flow of your stream, giving you fresh water. You go in there, you destroy your forest. Now you have flooding. You have landslide. Your forest, your stream is dried up. Now the money you so-called got when you sold off all of these things, you are still using the money, plowing it back, which would not be as efficient as the way nature has placed it.
Isn't it amazing how all this is interconnected, but it is not obvious?
No. And that is where we try to create the awareness. And that is why this year's theme is that we are part of the solution.
Well, Mr.
Wow.
We have gotten this far. Modernization, development, globalization seems to have ebbed away at the natural course of things. Is there a pathway back to nature?
There has to be. There has to be. Because we, as a species, have reached a turning point. We have. There's no doubt about it. All over the world. I mean, as we have referred to several times on this and several other programs, you know, what happened with the COVID? Locked the whole world down, just like that. Nature, boom. There is a law of action and reaction that is actually being activated now, which is known as the law of retribution. And it's there in science, it's there in nature, it's there in all the scriptures. Every single scripture that's worthwhile calling it a scripture is there. It's been activated. So we have to find the way back. And in order to do that, we have to understand where we have gone wrong. And sadly, you know, as human beings, as a species, we have really not developed enough to handle the responsibility that we have now been bestowed with through our creativity, through our intelligence. You know, technology, most of the technology we have, a lot of it was driven just because we wanted to have weapons of warfare. And we've been using these weapons of warfare so negatively, not just against ourselves, but against the very nature, the very biodiversity, the very miracle of creation, which is our life support system.
Okay.
So we need to have a renewal of our minds. We need to refresh ourselves.
Well, yeah, Mr. Knight, when you spray aerosol in the air, the target is a mosquito.
Or the fly.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
Uh-huh.
other insects and stuff like that. In going back to nature, some technology, we definitely can't kill technology.
No, we can't kill technology. It's about adaptation, and it's about starting to move in the right direction. But let's go back to the biodiversity thing. That was our theme. What do you think eats the mosquitoes and eats the flies? Things like bats. And if we kill the bats with things like insecticides and things like that, then we end up, we try and solve one problem, we create another problem with it. And then the problem from the other side becomes worse than the problem we originally tried to solve.
Yeah.
So, some of the projectants in aerosols, historically, CFCs, and thank God we've now got rid of those, but that was driving the hole in the ozone layer. So, sometimes we think we're too clever, and we've got this, this is a technological solution, it'll all be fine. But nature solved many of these problems a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we can learn a lot from nature. And I think the other thing I was going to say is that I think there's an awful lot to be learned in terms of sustainability from looking at traditional cultures, traditional ways. And I think I always say to people, we're going to learn a lot from Africa and African traditional things that are going to help us survive in the new world, because this path we're going on is not sustainable. And I think COVID is just one indicator of how fragile it can be. We've just shut the world down, basically. Yep. And a lot of that was driven by environmental problems that led to that happening. So we've got to learn some of these lessons, and some of these lessons are there in traditional culture, and they're there in nature. And, nature has had 1 billion experiments, solving 1 billion scientific experiments, and they have some amazing solutions out there.
Okay. Mr. Knight, this day is called International Day of Biodiversity. Do you think this day is being celebrated in China?
Well, it's very, very interesting, because yesterday there was a survey came out, and it was about how do people think their government is doing in protecting nature. And it was number one was Saudi Arabia. And the bottom one was actually France. Nigeria was 3 from the bottom. And what that says is that Nigerians think the government could do more to protect nature. China was actually quite high up there. Now,
but they eat everything.
Well, they used to eat everything. Now, let's get this clear.
Really?
Well, so nobody's really reported about this.
Including cockroaches.
Insects may well be an important source of protein.
Oh, really?
Going forward, yes, because it's very sustainable, and actually they have a lot of protein. So don't mock the humble cockroach. Maybe your cockroach burger will come one day. But
what did you just say?
Insects can be a very important source of protein. Many cultures eat insects around the world.
And they're quite sustainable because they produce so much.
Yes, exactly.
They produce so much.
We should eat more cockroach. We should eat more.
Maybe not cockroaches, maybe termites.
What's the difference?
Yeah, no.
Anyway,
Nigerians eat termites.
At least that one is more. Nigerians, they like that one more.
Because growing up, I remember the cook used to put water out
and
for termites to fall into it. Yes, when it rained.
When they fledge, yes.
And then he would fry them.
Yeah.
And you would have
I was not that adventurous, thank you very much.
And the key thing,
but I wish I had been.
The key thing then we get back to is sustainability, and that is something that could be done a very sustainable source of protein.
Okay. Well, Mr. Naja, we'll have just
termites.
1 minute. But why do you have to go there again? What? Just one, question, and you have just 1 minute. What do people need to begin to do now to return to nature, to embrace this biodiversity?
First of all, is the realization that we need every biodiversity to enjoy the life that we need to enjoy. We are all interconnected. And nature had placed all of these things in place so that it will serve one purpose after the other. And that is why in the food chain, or what we call the food web, the predator is usually smaller in number than the prey, so that it will control the population of the prey. And then the prey also is preying on another prey, which is more in population. So that balance has to be there. So what is my responsibility is for me to ask myself, what am I doing to either harm nature or to promote nature? Simple examples. At least let me relate it to myself. In my home, where do my trash end up? Plastics that I use. He talked about the sea turtle. As they travel between here and the islands in Caribbean, in the US, and while they are doing that, they are harvesting jellyfish. And jellyfish feed on fish. So if you remove turtle, you have bloom of jellyfish, and they will feed on fish, and they will not have enough fish. So you can see that we are all interconnected.
And
so
turtles eat plastic because they think it's jellyfish, and it gets poisoned.
And it gets poisoned, yes.
So your plastic can end up killing the turtle.
So that's why I just brought out that example so that we'll be aware. When you are going to your shop, please pick a bag and shop. Don't go and get another plastic bag. No, pick your shopping bag. So I'm trying to connect to the daily things that we do.
Guys, I'm overloaded right now. So I've had enough for one day. One doctor, medical doctor, told me once in an interview that we shouldn't kill all the mosquitoes in the world because they have their own role to play in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Mosquitoes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, don't talk about that one, please.
But if we have the right balance, the mosquito population will be under control from the natural balance. So, you know, you get mosquito infestations when it's out of balance.
Yeah. So that balance.
Go read up on biodiversity so you know your role in all of this.
Happy International Day of Biodiversity.
I have to thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning. Desmond Mark Jakodumi is founder at Lufasi Park, and he is a foremost environmentalist in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time. Joseph Onoja.
Environmental Bishop.
Joseph Onoja is Technical Director, Nigeria Conservation Foundation. Thank you so much, as well as Peter Knight, who is Executive Director, Wild Aid.
Thank you.
And please don't touch our bushmeat. We're back in a moment for another conversation. Do stay with us.